Hello and welcome to Studio Visit with the Raven, episode 9. I am here with Sarah Ridgley, generative artist, who I'm super excited to be interviewing today and having on the show. A fellow Art Blocks artist, a fellow generative artist that's has released a lot of work in the obviously crypto art space, but also, outside of that, and, has a really cool style with generative art. And I'm really excited to be talking with you today, Sarah. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I think let's kick it off and just talk about, I always like to ask, where did you grow up? And can you tell me a little bit about your beginnings?
Yes. Well, I grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is a small town.
I can hear the little southern twang in your voice.
Yes, right. So right on the border of Arkansas and Oklahoma. So for sure.
Yes.
And it's small, but that's comparative because we're actually the third largest city in Arkansas. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's small, but big for Arkansas. Anyway, I lived here through high school. And then I went to college in another, even really small town in Arkansas. And that was a really great experience. I graduated with an English degree. And so, super practical. I had no idea what I was going to do after that. So I got a work visa and was able to move to London for a year. And that was really exciting to go to a big city from having spent my whole life not in any kind of environment like that. I had been to Europe a few times, so I wasn't completely shocked or anything, but it was great. It was really fun. I had so much fun, and I did all these random jobs there. And but when my time was up, they weren't going to give a visa to some barely employed 22-year-old, so they sent me back home. And I decided I'll go to law school. That's what I'll do next. So I went to law school. And it was great. It was really fun. I went to Arkansas, U of A, in Fayetteville. So really, I have spent and grown up and lived my whole life in Arkansas. Yeah, and while I was there, I kind of I really enjoyed studying and learning, but I did not enjoy talking and debating and having verbally defend my position. So I kind of realized halfway through that
there'll be no cross-examination today, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. This is not Sarah. This is not where she's going to be happy. But I worked in the law library while I was there, and this was back in the days when you had internet library, you went to the computer on campus to get the internet, right? And so I just played around on the internet a lot when I wasn't working on homework, and I discovered letterpress printing, which I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
But it's using these really old antique machines to create work. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I just read about it, and then I just randomly bought a press on eBay.
Oh, wow.
It's I'm just gonna go for this. And the couple was located in Minnesota. And the press came with a full type cabinet. And so it weighed like a huge amount. And so shipping was not something I could afford. I bought the whole thing for $100, which was still way expensive at the time for me in college. But I couldn't even begin to imagine shipping. And so they contacted me and they were like, well, we're actually going to be in Tunica this weekend and we'll have the press with us. So my boyfriend and I just hopped in the car at 5 p.m. one night and drove across the state to Tunica to meet these people at midnight in a casino parking lot to get my first printing press.
Wow.
So it was quite an experience.
They were going in the casino after to spend that money.
Oh yeah, they were. I was giving them the money. That's right. So, and then of course, that boyfriend is now my husband, because anyone that would do something like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
a great story.
Yeah. So we got the press back home, and in between everything that was going on, I taught myself how to use it. There's no manual for this 1890s machine. So it was a lot of tinkering and figuring out how to put the type in and to run everything. But there were some forums online even back then. There's a
maybe for the viewers who don't know what that machine is, can you maybe like tell, like, just do a brief explainer about that?
Yeah,
what it is, what it does.
So it's like if you have ever seen an image of a Gutenberg press. Well, that's a different kind of style, but it's basically the idea of having type here, paper here, and you push them together. So you ink and you press it, and then it creates the image on the other side. So it's like kind of basically like any form of printing besides digital, I guess.
Yeah.
You're hand creating it. But what I loved about it was that you get this really good tactile sensation. You can really push the type in, and it has this expression, and it was lovely. They had wonderful papers, and I just had so much fun like playing with that and exploring and everything. And of course there was a lot of pushback from my family, like, why are you doing all of this when you're amassing massive amounts of debt in law school? But I was just like, I don't love that, but I'm going to give it my best effort. And so I passed the bar, I became licensed, and I practiced for a little while, but I was always printing on the side. And then this was about the time when Etsy came around.
Yep.
So I got on Etsy and I started selling some of the things that I was doing. And that was really fun. And I also got involved in this community. And that was like at the very beginning of Etsy. And so it was it was just so much more, it was so different than it is now. There were all these people and we were friends and talked. And it was almost even before, like also around the beginning of smartphones. So I remember the first time I got a BlackBerry, and we were driving somewhere, and I was able to, like, I had a data plan now, and I could go on and talk to people on a forum while I'm in the car. And I thought, this is so cool. Like social media beginnings, like not being tethered to your home or whatever. So that's my early history.
Yeah. Did you, even before that, when you were like young, did you do like any coloring or anything, or like were you interested in art like before that, like when you were in elementary school or anything like that? Or was that your first kind of, when you really started to get creative, was in law school?
Yeah. I think I never really felt like art was for me as a child. I had terrible handwriting, and any attempts at art making, drawing, painting, it was just so miserable that I couldn't bring myself to do it, because I couldn't figure it out. And I guess I didn't have a lot of dexterity. I don't know. I just didn't learn it. I think if you don't have any early successes and you don't have someone pushing you to try things, you just give it up,
For sure.
But I was jealous of all my friends that could, take the pen and paper and draw these wonderful things just out of nothing. I loved that. And it was always something I wanted, but I had no idea
how to do it. Yeah.
It wasn't, just not for me, is what I thought. So
great. Yeah. So that sounds really cool. So then you were taking these kind of, using this letterpress, and what were you making with that? Like, and you were selling it on Etsy, and what kind of things were you making?
So the stuff that I was making and selling wasn't really very much in the artistic world. I was doing wedding invitations, and there was, I did some prints. I participated in a few different print calls, where there was one where everyone submitted a piece for the periodic table. And so it was made by different printers around the country. And it was actually displayed for a long time in some different chemical industry art rooms. Cool. I don't really know exactly, but that was a while ago.
So it was for everything.
Yeah. I was playing a lot. I had started collecting a lot of wood types, so I had these big letters. So I started playing with laying them out and doing different kind of inking things and stuff like that. But I never really sold any of that. That was more just playing. I don't know. I just wasn't sure.
Just for fun.
Yeah. But later that would come back and be like a really large part of where I went with creative coding. So I guess.
Yeah. And when did the technology and the coding aspect of it come in? Like, when did you learn to program? Like, when did you add that to your toolkit?
Yeah. So back when I was in college, I took a 3-week Dreamweaver course, and that was the only exposure I ever had to coding. I never went beyond college algebra. So not a whole lot of programming experience, but I made a few websites just for fun. Like, I made silly websites with my girlfriends, and we would just do stupid stuff. And Eventually, when I started doing letterpress on Etsy, I made my own website because that was the thing that you did, right? You had your website. And then, I don't know when it was, but I suddenly wanted to use some plugins and I wanted to have like image rollover and do some effects on my website. But you had to buy a plugin. I thought, well, why don't I just learn how to code and make my own? So that's really when I first tried or experienced coding. I took a Code Academy class for Python, which was not JavaScript, but it was similar.
Yeah.
And then I did that edX, that CS50 course, Intro to
Computer Science or something like that. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And that was really eye-opening because I didn't understand anything about like what binary code was or any of that. But it like laid it all out for me and I realized how everything was related and it was great. But when I first started like trying to figure all this out, I remember I spent a whole week. I could not figure out how to call a function. Like I've written a function. Why isn't it doing anything? And I tried to ask people that and they're like, my programming friends, and they couldn't comprehend that I wouldn't know something so like basic, so they couldn't explain it to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like because I was like self-taught as well. Like, and I remember taking Code Academy courses and stuff like that. And like, it just when I think back, like it's so it's like it's almost like you need to give it time too, because like I think it changes your brain. Like in like you can't change your brain overnight. Like I think it's like it's like I don't know. It's weird to explain, but it literally takes time to like wrap your head around how to think about programming and like how it actually works. And then once like you get more like your brain almost like grows to like think in that way, then it becomes easier. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm sure maybe you relate.
Yeah, I completely relate. It's like this whole new thing. But then I found the coding train and Daniel Schiffman's courses, and those were so great because he was so funny.
Yeah.
And relatable because he would like make silly errors and then it would help me not feel like an idiot every time I type something, right? So yeah, that was really how I got, and that was just learning to program. That was before I figured out or found creative coding or generative art. So I was just kind of learning and doing those things, and then I would get on Stack Overflow,
Yep.
Yeah, and ask questions.
RIP. Now probably nobody goes to that site because they all just look it up on AI.
They would act like you were ridiculous for the questions that you asked, but somehow I found something and I was suggested to look at P5.js and I was like, oh, what is this? And I had no idea that you could do anything like that. And oh my gosh, I just went down the rabbit hole so fast. I was like, this is so amazing. You can make art with code. You can use this code thing that I'm learning to make drawing and shapes and things and put stuff on the screen. This is like mind blowing, and as I said, like as a child, I had always felt like it would be hard to find a medium that I enjoyed. And of course, I did the letterpress printing, but being and that was a lot of composing and Illustrator and stuff like that. But here I found a way to like make my own work, and it was just amazing and perfect for me. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you found finally a way to kind of express that creativity in a way that you felt that you were, good at, or you could actually do at a high level, right?
Right. And I was old by then. So the encouragement to anyone that struggles for a long time. I was late 30s and I found that. So
yeah, that's it's a great thing to point out. It's like, I think everybody can learn no matter what age you are. Like, and sometimes like a number of other guests we've talked about this, but it's like sometimes as you get older, it's hard you kind of get stuck in these channels, right, of routines and things like that, or things you believe about yourself, or that I can learn or I can't learn this, and you kind of get trapped a little bit. And something like creativity is a big part of that, right? Of a lot of times when we get older, we kind of become less creative because we just stop dreaming almost, like kids do. But anybody who listens to this has already heard this, because I talk on this on every episode, but yeah, that's the point. It's like, you know, life's long, and like it's never too late to start to learn any of this stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I think that was a big reason why I wanted to do art blocks was I felt like I had a kind of a different story of not coming from that background of most people and having a different way of approaching everything, and being a woman, you know, there
Yeah,
weren't
that's
a
huge.
lot
I
of
mean,
women on there right at that time, and especially when I applied, which was in February of
yeah,
21, the very beginning. I don't think there had been any female artists at that
yeah.
point. Um, and so I just kind of wanted to be like, hey, this is really cool and awesome. And if I can do it and learn it, anyone can. So let's celebrate that, you know?
Yeah, it's something that I think of too, and I'm really thankful for you and all the other, you know, female artists have come on, you know, done art blocks and things like that. As like a dad with a daughter, like I really, you know, I think you're doing something really special and showing that something that is, you know, so male dominated as you know, programming, engineering, and all these type of things that, you know, girls and women can really, you know, not only do it, but they can be at the top of these fields, which is amazing. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
But on that note, like, let's talk about art blocks a little bit. When you were, you know, like, when did you hear about art blocks, and like, how did that come about, like NFTs and that kind of stuff?
Well, I heard about art blocks. Somehow I think I must have been following Eric from before it happened, because I remember seeing it kind of bubbling around on Twitter, and I was kind of following some people in the gen art space. I joined Twitter in 2019. I was already on Instagram, but that was when I kind of came over and started seeing what people were doing there. And um, I watched everything. I didn't mint anything. I should have, but I was interested in this idea, and I got on the Discord maybe in January of 21, and I tried, like, I was interested in participating, but I didn't understand. I was like, how do you make your code small enough to go on chain? How do you make it resolution agnostic?
Yeah,
These are things that I don't know, and there's no, like, there wasn't a lot of teaching about that anywhere. You know, it
yeah.
was figure it out for yourself, and I wasn't in the Slack at that time. I finally got in. Aaron invited me, and then I was like, oh, hallelujah.
Yeah, Sarah's referring to the Gen Art Club, which is a lot of the artists I have on here, and myself are a member of, which is just a private group that we can talk about, you know, get help on, and just kind of just talk with other generative artists. So it's been really helpful for me as well. So yeah.
So let's see. So I applied in February, and I heard back from Jeff in April. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. This art blocks thing is like blowing up. I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't know. So I didn't reply for like 2 months. And I started trying to figure out what kind of project I would do, what would inspire me enough that I felt like I could do this. Long form was so overwhelming, because at that time it was like 1,000 pieces, and everyone was doing 1,000 pieces, and I thought, I don't know how to like make something that's going to be that unique over that time. But then I had some ideas, and they started coming together, and I figured out how to do it. The things that I'm thinking, to translate it into the code and to start working with the resolution agnostic. I kind of figured that step out, and I had done some code golfing before, so I was able to bring my code size was actually, I think it was only 7 kilobytes for him, and maybe a little bit more, because I didn't know how much this was going to cost me, and I was really scared of it. Like, what this commitment, right? You got some stakes here.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah. Back then it was expensive. I mean, like, I think my moments was about that size, like 7 kilobytes, and I remember it cost like 0.6 ETH or something like that to upload. So it was not a, you know, a free upload.
Yeah, not at all. No, and it was risky and scary, and I was present, so then I didn't know, like,
Yeah.
I hope I sell 3 of these or 5 of these to,
Yeah.
make it back. So I don't know. I I did it. I made a project. I was very proud and very happy with it. I think it was really different, especially when I was working on it. Of course, I was working on doing something that I wanted to be more painterly and less, I don't know, algorithmic looking, I guess, really kind of leaning into that. Yes, there we go. And of course, like 2 days before, Matt released Meridian. So I was like,
Yeah, tough act to follow.
that was the next one. That was so hard. I was like, oh, I wish I had known that. I would have like more. I don't know, but I was still very happy with what I did. Like
Oh
I
yeah, this is a
do, and I was very proud of it, and worked really hard to create an idea and just bring it to life. It was fun, and so there's a lot of clouds.
And what was the inspiration behind this? Like, how did you come to with this idea and to
Yeah,
making
I was
this?
well, I was thinking about like something in nature, but I didn't really want to do like plants. I don't know. I was looking in the sky a lot because this was like COVID, right?
Yeah,
And watching, and I was like, man, the clouds, they're like follow these same patterns, but they're always different every time. It's like that's just like generative art. This
yeah,
is this is like a perfect match here. So I just kind of started studying the clouds, and I would go outside and look at how they were formed and kind of think about how I would do that with code and how I would, layer it and different things. And I didn't use any circles, although I think it might look like there's a lot of circles, but they're more like polygon shapes,
mm.
uh, overlapping each other, and kind of different methods of the coloring was what was a lot of fun, actually, was trying to figure out how to create so much different shades and depth in the color throughout the piece. So
Yeah. Did you use like transparency for this, and then it kind of stacks
yeah.
where?
So what I did was I made a background layer,
Hmm.
and I filled it with different shapes, and then I did pixel lifting.
Yep.
That was where I had to spend the most amount of time, was how to make that fast because it was so slow.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it would redraw at different opacities, so they would overlap, and it would create all of the different colors in different places.
Yeah. That's a great technique of just and it's just a beautiful project. Like, and even this detail you did of kind of putting this white border on the side, but then having it feel like more of a organic painting type with this edge.
Right.
Really, it really is a beautiful series. I know, my brother Brett, he bought one, and he's like, this is one of his favorite projects. So yeah, and one of mine too. It's just beautiful. Like, you got that skeuomorphic feel to it, that it feels painterly even though it's code, right? Which is awesome. And soft, like it doesn't feel hard. It's something that I think anybody will look at this and say, oh, this is really a beautiful image.
I was trying to make it soft. Like that was a big part of it, was I didn't want it to look anything like it was made with code, because everything looked so much like it was made with code. So I was
Yeah.
really trying to take this extreme opposite approach, which at the time there were not a lot of people doing. Now there's a lot of people doing that, to the point where now everyone doesn't like this style anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. I felt the same way. I had moments in Piece of Me, like I felt like it was novel to do something like to simulate brushstrokes with code or something like that. But, it just, artists took it to like the next level that I can't compete on, because like
Oh,
you
yeah.
got MP Cos and William Mapon. Like, I should have them on the podcast. They should do a battle on this show.
Oh, that would be amazing.
A live battle. I want to see, because they battle like with the skeuomorphic projects, and they're fighting with like nuclear war, and I'm over here with a little like shank or something. I don't know, but they are like so talented and have taken that whole genre of generative art to like, I don't even know if they can get any more realistic at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, when I hear that word skeuomorphic, when I first heard it, I was like, what does this mean? What are people saying? And I looked it up, and I guess it's a design term for
Yeah.
making things more relatable. Like they would do it with like the camera for Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically we should explain it for sure, but skeuomorphism is basically it's a way that making things appear almost like to mirror another medium, right, or something like that, where it's than what it's initially than what the piece is. So it's, in this case, it's, this is something made by code, which is a digital art piece, but we're attempting to make it seem analog, right, and use it and to emulate paint strokes, which is on canvas, or a painting or something like that, which is obviously not digital, right? Like it's analog.
I feel like that's like when people have that argument, that it's almost kind of reductive, because you're not painting, you're not studying the way that the paint like flows on the canvas. You're building things with pixels and you're arranging with algorithms, and it's like this entirely different approach that
100%. Yeah,
it's lost in this discussion or looked down on somehow. But I mean,
I don't
move forward, you have to you make new textures and new ways of making art.
I'm with you. I think the debate is to fairly express the other side's point to this, is some people feel that it doesn't really embrace the digital medium, is kind of what their argument is, and saying that we shouldn't be looking at the past and trying to recreate painting, for example, with in digital artwork, because that is painting, right? It's an analog medium. Like, we should be embracing animation, like 3D, all these other things or just more aesthetics that are more digital, just in general.
Doesn't it feel like, though, that whole thought is like promoting some kind of reverence for like 80s and 90s graphics?
Yeah, it is kind of. That's what it is. And I think
that is digitally native is something that was what the computers were capable of 30 years ago. But what computers are capable of now is totally different. And it's not relatable at all to say that a canvas can only have like square shapes and like,
exactly. I'm with you on that. I think that's a great counter argument to that, of that. Yeah, like what does that even mean, right? Like, does that mean we have to all make voxel stuff? Like,
we're still learning what digitally native is, and it's always changing. The goalpost is always moving because technology is always changing.
Yeah. So, and that's like saying, to be fair, it's kind of like on that same note, right? Is like, that's like saying if you do a painting of a mountain range or something, it's like somehow, it's the same type of thing where now you're going like the mountain range is real, but like you're painting it or something, you know what I mean? It's like
exactly like all of paint or all of art is like a skeuomorph of like reality.
Of reality, exactly. So it's like, oh, okay, you're gonna go say that people should go there in person and see it instead of it being on a painting. But yeah, like it's interesting philosophical discussion for sure. I think I understand some of what the arguments are, because I do understand that, like, like the desire to try to kind of make digital art, like make it more like own digital art and have its own kind of aesthetic, almost, is like the desire of that, and saying, okay, we can differentiate. Because the thing with skeuomorphic art, which is just challenging, is that I think people in this community, people that listen to this podcast and things like that, we understand what generative art is, and I think you can learn about it, and you wrap your head around that, oh, this is made with code, and that's amazing that this was able to do that. But I think a lot of these pieces, mine and this piece is in general, if you just show people, you don't explain to them that this is actually crafted with JavaScript code, I think it still would be beautiful no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's made with code or not, right? Like that's another point of it, but I guess it loses maybe some of its something of the piece if people don't know that context, right? If they think that you just did this in Photoshop or something like that,
right. Yeah, for sure.
and you just use the I don't know, the paint,
But I don't
the
necessarily
brush tool in Photoshop, right? Versus actually coding this. I think as people get more educated on what generative art is and what actually, is required to like make these pieces, like yours that we're looking at right now, I think the appreciation will grow outside the, generative art community as it is now. But that's going to take some time. But I think, hopefully it happens. But yeah,
I don't mind morphism nearly as much as I mind the word mimicry. But when I hear that, I'm just like, you.
Yeah, I mean, and also it goes in trends, right? Like, I think, it's funny how the whole art world, goes in trends, fashion goes in trends. I mean, even generative art has gone in trends, like if in art blocks and just in crypto art, generative art. We saw, in the beginning, it was like I was talking with, Alex and Steven with Generative Artworks. We talked about the early art blocks projects, how they felt, almost hobbyish. They felt very digitally native. They weren't really going for more of a fine art feel. It was more of just kind of a different kind of just almost quicker culture. People weren't spending as much time on pieces. And then it evolved into this skeuomorphism, I think was a big trend. And then I remember like when Per like released The Harvest, that seemed like another trend when I knew that trend was gonna.
That was a fantastic project, though.
Yes, it was an amazing project because he also released it at a time that I think that everyone was craving something a little different because it was a lot of skeuomorphic projects in a row, and he came with that, which didn't feel like the other projects that were being released. It wasn't trying to do painting or anything like that. It felt very different than what was being released, but still at a very high level. And also it was like extraterrestrial elements. You felt like it had a storyline, of almost cinematic to it. So really cool project. But and I'm just curious to see like where does that go? What's the next trend, in generative art and stuff? Where are we going?
Yeah, I think we have to take all these steps. That's what I love about it, is everybody pursuing what's exciting to them, because that makes you happy, and you do your best work when you're excited and thrilled with what you're doing. And if we have everybody doing that and we're not telling anyone they can't do something, then everybody moves forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to jump into maybe some of your other projects that you worked on. I don't know if you want to talk about any of these. I love this writing that you've done. Yeah, we get a broken link. It's okay. We can look at it on here, especially like, look at this. I don't know if these will come up, but this piece is awesome. Look at this.
I did that. That was like the precursor to him. And when I first discovered how to layer things and pull the pixels out. So I did 2 pieces on, or maybe it was 3 on Tezos.
Yeah, to people listening, this is computational specimen number 2, which is on the Tezos blockchain. It's on object.com, but to describe it, it's basically just an abstract, almost like a dark blue, almost black, but very dark blue, on basically a white field. Looks like color field painting, and well, not color. Well, it's in that genre, but it's definitely it's definitely like dark, but gives me that abstract expressionism, like Rothko vibes for sure.
Yeah, it was just kind of an experiment in how can I use this new technique that I have and try and make something different. So I did, and then put it out there just to kind of put my marker on. Here's where I am right now.
Yeah, really, I love this piece too because you added those nice little detail, this nice like gold almost in here that's just sprinkled throughout. That really
flicking it on there.
What'd you say?
I was imagining flicking it on there.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
How it actually came
yeah.
out. I was thinking about.
Which is actually like in moments I have the speckle trait, which I did the same thing. So yeah, it's I love it. Yeah, I really like this piece. And with this writing that you've done, what is behind that? Like that looks really cool.
Yeah, the asymmetric writing, that was probably the first thing that I really started working on when I did code. I wanted to create a writing system for my own handwriting. So I was researching that and I made like A, B, and C. And I got them to where they would work and they would like generate differently every time. And I could spell words like cab and add and things. But then I kind of got bored with like the fact that they were just actual letters in the alphabet. And like, where's this going? This is just like typography or something. And it's not where I wanted to do. Not that there's anything wrong with typography. It's just not what I wanted to do. So I turned them into these like gibberish kind of shapes where they were just random glyphs that didn't mean anything, that didn't have it. And I discovered there was a word for that. It was called asymmetric writing. I don't know.
Yeah.
That, but yeah. And about that same time, that's when I found Vera Molnar and her work with Lettres de ma Mère.
Yeah, that's a great series.
Yeah, and that was like, oh, this is when I just first started coding and everything, and I'm like, oh, there's another woman involved in this, and I, hadn't really met the community a lot, and she's been doing this for a long time. I didn't know how old she was at the time. I was just like, oh, so that was really inspiring to me to see that and to see the work that she had done with her letters and how she was envisioning like her mother's handwriting, and then thinking about. It got me to thinking about how like just the slight changes and how the letters form themselves. It almost does look like another person's writing, another style, another little, version of it. So I made some poems that I generated and did on Object again. Those were, yeah. I don't think I ever did anything on chain or like live minting until him, and that was the first time I did that.
Yeah,
so these were all like,
again, this is like a great output. I love that it's just simple, but it looks really convincing that it's writing. One thing, and then also I just like you just have a really good sense of not doing too much, which is like you have this here. I love that it's not like just centered, it's actually off-centered, which makes it feel really nice. And then your proportion of color is really awesome with this, of that you have the blue, which is obviously the dominant, but then you have this red, which is, it's greatly proportioned to the blue, which makes it really stand out.
Right. Well, thank you.
And you have also these speckles here again, which is really cool. And the texture, like that's crazy. That you were able to get this texture, because that looks really, really convincing that it's, it's writing.
What I love about the asymmetric writing is, like you're kind of removing the reading element and you're almost creating kind of a dichotomy in the viewer's mind. Like you're not sure, am I supposed to be reading this or am I supposed to be viewing this? What am I supposed to be doing with this? And so it, like, that abstractness just really opens it up to different interpretations, which I like, being able to create things like that. This was an ode to my CryptoPunk right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I made it and I minted it for myself.
That's great.
Yeah. And this was before any other
we're going back in time now.
Yeah, way back in time. Before like apes or any other thing.
Yeah. Were you when did you get your punk? Like, did you get it before like the whole craziness and stuff like that? Were you back when you claimed it, or did you get it after that?
I wish I claimed it. My goodness, no. I got it in like 2020, but I only paid like maybe $100 for it.
Yeah, you were definitely.
It was definitely early.
Yeah,
I guess.
That was good. And how did you hear about punks? Did you hear about it through like Reddit, or did you?
Punks.
Or you can't remember that?
No, well, it must have been like because I minted CryptoKitties, so
Yeah.
I think people were talking about punks at that time. But then I thought, oh, I don't really want to pay $50 for this thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then I waited a few years, and then I got punk. I was like,
Yeah.
I think this has some serious potential, and I'm getting one.
Yeah. It's funny how everything just like is, it's just the crazy world how things turn out. These are
that's one of my really old stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's no, but I really think that like looking through your work, and then here we go, we're gonna move into 2022. Look at this, like this looks this is like Monet, right? That's what it feels like,
It definitely has a very strong feeling of that.
Yeah, of that but it's made with code again, like
Yeah.
really nice. So tell us about this project a little bit.
Well, this was a fun one. It was with a platform called Endless Ways. I don't know if you know Leah something.
Heard of him before.
Yeah. So they did this platform on Tezos where it was basically going to be like art blocks on Tezos, and it was live minting. So you got the code was on chain and everything. So this was like the first on chain Tezos projects where it was me and like 5 other artists that did it the first day. So that was kind of the concept, and then I just worked really hard on it. It's kind of, I mean, you can see hints of Hemin in there and the shapes of the waves and everything. I'm using those same polygon shapes at that time, and then discovering some new techniques with how I did the flowers and everything. And I was thinking a lot when I was doing this project. What I was thinking about was memory, which I know you would have a relation to as well. Yeah. But thinking about like the memory of the computer, and then also with printing, or like when you make a print and you release it and it's like the ink's here and the plate's here and you kind of have what's left of it is here, but there's still like an impression that exists somewhere. This thing still kind of exists in the memory of the work. And so that was kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah, that's great. And then what is the and what was I going to say? It's just so if people are listening, this is the project we're looking at is Memory of Nymphaeus.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. And what was the origin of the name for that?
Memory of Nymphaeus. I think it was, the memory part was coming up with like the idea that it was in the memory of the computer, right?
Yeah.
Then Nymphaeus was just basically a direct reference to Monet. I mean,
Yeah, and just if people are listening, you should go and check out Sarah's website at sarahridgley.com, where she has all her work on there. But what we're looking at is just like, it looks very like Monet water lilies, with
water lilies are nymphaeas in French. So.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, and it's but obviously made with code, and just a lot of your work. I just really am impressed because. I think it's important to mention that it's made with code, but again, like if people just didn't even know, they would just be like, wow, this is very beautiful work, like even if it was painted or made in Photoshop or something like that. But the fact that it's made in code just makes it, even more impressive. So it's pretty amazing.
There's a lot of time working on that texture, so I don't like it being told that I can't.
Yeah, for sure. And then what was this project? So then I saw this.
We missed doing it. I remember talking about it.
Yeah, I saw that you were doing this. I didn't ask you about it. I think I saw you in Marfa. But it's called Blind Date: An Ongoing Generative Poetry Performance. And you had a little machine I saw on Twitter. And you were going around and tell us like what were you doing with this?
So the idea behind it was just like basically marking a moment, making a moment, something that you'd remember. And the idea is that I would generate it. The person would press the button and it would generate for them. And then I would keep a digital copy and they would get the printout. So we both get a piece of this that comes together to create kind of the whole thing. And it was just this concept of like, if you have this piece of paper in your hand and it's got written on it the words of a certain time and a date and a location, like you can just call that back, you know, you can remember where you were, who we were talking to, what was going on. We were mostly in Marfa. I haven't gotten the Paris ones uploaded yet, but you know, and just how like the act of writing down, like journaling or whatever, it really like solidifies that in your mind, or it can take you back there. So it was just this concept of being able to create all of these moments with different people and go back to those moments in just a second, and by looking at them. So, and then I didn't remember to take pictures of everybody, but I started being much more meticulous on that to get the picture of the hand, just to kind of put it into place and perspective. Like that's Anna and I were driving to Marfa when we took that picture. So,
and what's this device that you have here? Is this validator on it? Is that?
I wrote that.
Oh, you wrote that. Okay.
I called it my validator because it was validating the moment. I was kind of also thinking of it being kind of this physical blockchain thing where we're printing blocks of time and everything's date stamped and going into a chain of time and events. But it's called a Fomimo. It's a little portable printer. I think it's a receipt printer maybe, but I had sticker paper in it so that it could be a sticker for.
Oh, that's cool. And then was the code stored on this device, or was it on your phone, or what was how did you get
it? It had an app that runs it, and it would load a website, so you could save a website. So I put a website on my website that had the code loaded. So then it would just work. I could just press it and I could type the name in, or they could type their name in. So that it has both names on there.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So then you could basically just like print out the website or something like that.
Yeah. So just I sized everything to make sure it would load on the phone the exact dimensions of the thing. So then when it like created the thing, I would just hit print, and then it would print out the full web page, which would just be the poem. And then blind date is because, well, the kind of the idea was kind of being funny, like it's a blind date or just a random encounter. And then it had these the little square rectangular things that go over. They're like eraser font glyph things that are in there, and so it would kind of blind out or hide some of it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then is this like the date? Is that what's in there, or?
The date is written. So what I did also there was I turned date into words, and I turned location into numbers. So kind of like flipping.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah. So the location is the latitude and longitude numbers.
Yeah.
And the date and the time are written in word form, and then of course the names.
And then you would open the site on your phone, and then you were using like HTML5 location or something to grab that.
Yeah, I just use exactly.
Yeah.
So who knows how accurate the location is? I don't know. My phone's not that great, but it was good enough.
Yeah, but it's close enough.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be super accurate either. So
yeah, exactly. That's really cool, though. That's a really cool project to think of the hardware element and all of that.
The idea of being able to do something that was live and that was also printing, somehow a way to incorporate like the idea of print and a print practice into something that could be generative and that would make sense to be a single print, because this is something that I've been working on a lot lately in my head, is that like print methods that I use, letterpress or risograph or whatever, are really more suited to creating multiple copies of something. But generative is so suited to creating like a single unique output for everything, right? So how do you put those together? And this was kind of a first attempt at that, where it made sense that you would just have one print, because they're just these small things,
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about Virendaria. Is that how you pronounce it?
I've been saying Verdaria, but I think it's
Verdaria.
Verdaria. I don't really know. I don't know that there's like an official.
I'm horrible about pronouncing things. I just like read them. It's like, I'm just gonna give it a shot here, and like because you just normally on all these things you just read it, and then you have your own version of it. It's like reading a novel, and then you like the whole book. You've been saying in your head like that this that this is like, you know, the name is how this person's name is pronounced. Then you go see the movie and they say it like for 2 hours the other way, and you're like, what?
I love that. Yes, I struggle with that.
You're like, no, this I can't do it because I have it in my mind that it's this. This is how it's pronounced. The movie's wrong.
Ethereum and ETH. I always wanted to call it ETH, and I still make that mistake because I've read it for so long as ETH, and now I'm like, oh,
yeah, it's like the wars around.
Don't forget ETH.
Is it a GIF? Is it a GIF? Like, you know.
Yeah. The GIF. It's just weird.
This project, so you did this with Proof. You did it in the Diamond Collection. You know, I was there, and I saw this come to life, which was awesome. And
I love
it's I own some of these, and I really enjoy it. It gives almost like it always gave me a what are those ink blots type thing?
Research.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know if that was your inspiration at all, but like it gives me this symmetrical or like the pseudo symmetrical aspect of it, like kind of gives me that feeling towards it. But
it actually, I mean, it wasn't like a direct reference to that, but definitely there was an attempt to, because they're not perfect matches. Like if you look carefully, it's not exact on each side, so that was a lot of work to make it slightly different, but.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, and it, I think you remember you told me it's Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah. So I kind of took that as a theme, like thinking about, having to think about things backwards because I had to work so much. I had to do so much flipping to get the canvases to do what I wanted to do here. So I was like working backwards, and I was like, oh, you know, like to get out of this garden, Alice had to do the exact opposite of whatever you would think. So she had to go the other way or walk backwards. I can't remember exactly, but to escape from it. So I just thought that was a nice connection there. And I love Lewis Carroll. And so all of the traits are kind of made up words, like inspired by, you know, Jabberwocky and things like that. So
I'm going to find it on the Proof site. You can see all of them, but probably should have searched. Where do I do this? Just search up here. Oh, right here. There we go. Yeah,
and there's a lot of them.
Yes, there are. So yeah, I can actually just do this. It should work.
Well, I really love how they load too. Are you going to show the rendering?
Oh yeah, they're slow to load. Oh yeah. I remember how this is it. This is it. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, they load great. Like, this is so much fun.
I loaded. I would just sit and watch them go forever and ever. This is so cool.
Yeah, for anybody who is listening, you know, I always put a link to the YouTube in the show notes below. So, you know, click through if you're interested in seeing some of Sarah's work, because we are going through it on the video version. So always just, you know, if you want to see what we're talking about, but yeah, this is a beautiful project. You know, it's I love the colors again, the texture. Get a lot going on in this project. Do they all have the same background? That the brown background, was that kind of?
I think they do all have the same. Well, actually, no. There's one variation where they're black.
Oh, that is a black. Is that like kind of a more rare trait?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, because of this color palettes, only one of them has the black background. But I love that. Really makes the reds and the whites pop. So
yeah. Cool. No, it's really cool, and it looks again like this looks like it's been splattered on there, right? Like it has that same, like we were talking about earlier, of, you know, it has that look of it's you know, paint was almost thrown at this, like, you know, yeah, very quickly. It has a sense of movement to it, and you know, but something it still, you know, ends up somewhat symmetrical, which is interesting.
Yeah, it does.
And it goes back to like, it kind of goes back to your print work, because, you know, it's like, again, like that aspect of copying, right? Of that you're printing something like that, and you're, you know, taking an impression of things. And
yeah.
again, like it's almost like you fold it in half and smush the colors together and unfolded it, that's at least what it's bringing to mind to me, which is really cool.
Definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And like, I think it's really cool where you're going. And like, what about this piece? Like this one was different because it's like kind of, this must have been, looking at it, it's very geometric, which I didn't see in your art before. Did you have to do like some physics work and things like that in here that like you didn't have to go before? Yeah.
I did. I had to learn WebGL for this one to be able to figure that out, because being able to, so I did the same technique. It's pixel lifting from the background, but I was able to draw on a WebGL canvas, so I could get that 3D thing going with the cubes, and then just pick different pieces that I wanted to have filled in or not. So yeah. And then I created for this, which I was very proud of, a nearest neighbor sorter.
Yep.
So it would, because if you just pick the pixels, it would just want to draw it straight down like this, right? But instead, I was able to sort them fast enough that it wasn't too slow, so that it would actually draw like the brown line on top following the path, even though the path is not like mathematically defined in any way. The path is just chosen pixels and then sorted together, kind of, which I guess is math. So whatever. But
oh wow. So you would so the brown lines you're saying were sorted in there, not necessarily drawn on top. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool, because it's always tricky when you to do that.
How to do the math for it.
Yeah.
How to make cubes and things. But I could figure out how to sort it, and then I had to figure out how to make that super efficient so that it didn't run too slow.
Yeah, because it's always tricky, like when you're trying to place things, because like what has to be, you don't want to cover up to make it like actually look like it's like it makes sense, like you have to put certain things on top of another thing, but then like it's like there's something behind that, and depending on what you're doing, you can't just like make another layer on top of it, right? Like,
yeah,
which is challenging.
Mm-hmm. Composition is hard.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever think like, becoming an artist, you'd like, have to be exposed to so much math? It's like insane. Like,
yeah. Well, I definitely didn't expect that until I started coding.
Yeah, but it's like, it's interesting. Like I've worked as like a professional software engineer for so long, and like nothing challenges my just coding in general, but more than not, like algorithmic really stuff in math, like than generative art. Like generative art is you can totally, and I don't want to dissuade people from generative art, because I don't think it's necessary, because I think you can just start with whatever, and people can make great pieces with simple techniques, right? I don't think it necessarily,
I don't know how the math works and what I do. I just know that if I change this variable, it does this, and if I change that variable, it does that.
And it's also just researching, right? Like a lot of these things that you're using are very like old techniques, like, or they've done in a lot of different projects. So it's like, just repurposing them and understanding them. It's not necessarily inventing a brand new algorithm or something like that, right? Which is
just a new way of mashing them together.
Exactly. So that's something that maybe is a tip for people that are trying to get into generative art or go further in or something like that, is that like, a lot of the techniques that the artists that are on this podcast and just in general are using are like, they're algorithms that have been around for a while, but just taking them and repurposing them for, to make art with, and to do what you want. You have to understand obviously what they do and like how you can use them, but
it takes a little time.
They're a tool, just like, you pick up a chisel or something like that in a physical art form, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
those are our brushes.
Exactly. So that's awesome. Where you know, what do you think? You know, I think your art is, again, like it's really looking, and even looking at it, you know, just going through it with you on this call, it's like really just solidified again, like, you know, how much good art you've put out there as far as in the generative landscape, especially around, you know, like we talked about, like simulating, you know, painterly techniques, you know, printmaking, these physical art forms, you know, like, and kind of emulating that in code, but doing it successfully, like, you know, that it like, it feels like it's like all your work feels very like I said, like I think if you took someone on the street and like showed them your work, like it'd be hard for them. They wouldn't guess that it was ever made with code. Like that would never be their guess, right? Which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And that you can do this at scale, right? And that's the thing that's really interesting too, is that you're talking about your early kind of getting into this with printmaking is, you know, the thing that's in common with the printmaking and generative art is this idea of scale, right? Where you're able to, you know, a printing press, the whole idea of it was that when it was invented to be able to scale, you know, before it was like things were written and scribes would actually have to like make books like by hand. And then the printing press was invented and it allowed for so much more dissemination of information. And I think that, you know, the through line here is that, you know, that you know, with generative art and writing code, right, it's doing that same thing with art almost, right, where it's before you had to paint every picture and things like that, and it takes an immense amount of time, right? But with generative art, you're able to kind of unlock this kind of you know, economies of scale where you can make this beautiful artwork, but you can do it, you can make an algorithm that generates it.
Yes. Very related.
Do you agree with what I'm saying? I just like,
yeah, like I love that. I love that. But then the thing that I was saying that I've been kind of like in the future that I want to figure out is how to use, like, this is my Rizzo printer right here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I want to go back into using more like physical methods along with generative, and not just like printing it out on an inkjet, but actually printing it myself with, this is kind of like screen printing. I don't know if you're familiar with risograph, but you have a digital screen. It uses a thermal print head and it engraves it into the thing, so you can make a new screen like in the machine all the time.
Oh, wow.
So it's like really quick to make your screen, but you still print one color at a time. So when I was in Paris, someone asked me, you know, are you going to be printing, because my project there was figs, are you going to be printing any of these in your studio? And I was like, no, because I can't take all these colors that I've got here and print them with one or two colors on my machine. But it made me think, and I started contemplating, like, maybe there is a way that I can combine, you know, if I have an RGB and then I have maybe like three similar kind of things, like a blue and a reddish and a yellow, maybe I can overlay those and get the colors that I want to have. And it's not going to be an exact match because it's subtractive versus additive, where you have the light, you know, and it gets more muddy the more you do that. But I think that there's something there that I really want to explore and find a way to create generative algorithms that would make a piece that would make sense to do multiples of, you know. So
yeah, you mean like physical multiples is what you're saying,
right? But see, I don't know that I want to do physical multiples. Then it's like this whole thing I go back and forth on. I'm like, I kind of just want to be able to print each, like do 10 outputs and have 10 different ones. But if I used, that would be 30 color sheets.
yeah,
if I use 3 colors per piece. So trying to figure out how to work with that.
Yeah, no, I think we're all like, it seems like all of us generative artists are convening around this idea of, moving into the physical, or a lot of generative artists, I would say, is like, like how to move into the physical and like translate what we have been doing with digital work to physical work, but doing it at scale, right? And how do we do that? And it's challenging because like, like up to this point, even myself, I do prints. I have a printer here and things like that, but it takes a lot of time to like print one print, right? Like it's I couldn't do that at a large scale, like and that's not even like, and that's just regular ink printing. Like I think it probably could figure out how to do that, but like to do kind of these other if we're talking about clothing, or we're talking about, like you're saying, a specialized print, things like that, that's when it becomes a lot more difficult to do, because it's never been done before. It's not, the systems that exist are not made for generative process, right? They're made for addition. They're made for, okay, you get, in the clothing front, this one shirt is made and we're going to make 1 million of these shirts, right? Like, and the whole process is made, everything is like an assembly line, and they do runs, and they're just making one, like, it's the same shirt, right? Like for 1 million times. Then maybe they'll switch to another pattern or something like that, and they'll do a run of that, right? But there's nothing that's really like on demand, like one of one, like roll off and send it, right? Like it's very hard to, I don't think it's, I don't know. No one's done that before. So it's like, it's very foreign to like how products are made, currently. But I think it's
exciting.
It's super exciting. I think it's awesome. I mean, like that's why I'm so excited about generative art too, is just, it's because I think just generative design, generative art, like creative coding, this can allow for, people to have unique pieces of work, that are, but they actually can afford, right? Where it's, in the past, like you said, like, when we talked about, no one could afford books before the printing press, right? It was, it was just unattainable, because, the books would cost so much money because they had to be written by hand. I think like in my mind, I look at that the same way of like generative art is, and I think other people don't view it this way. They view it as more of, oh, this is just another art form that, you produce one of ones, and, this is just, you sell it, and it's kind of, should be a really high price and things like that. I'm not like completely against that, but I just think that like the special thing about generative art and creative coding is that this economies of scale that it can enable. And I would love to see, a 1 million output collection that is in everyone's home in America, right? Where instead of going to, TJ Maxx or something like that, for, Americans know what that is, and buying the same painting that is there's a million edition, they could go there and they could buy a piece of generative art that's a one of one, right? That and maybe it costs around the same amount, because, it's enabled by the economy scale that a generative art algorithm can make, right? And they can have it in their home and say, this is a unique piece of art I have, you know what I mean? And they don't have to pay a fortune for it, right? That's what's exciting to me about it, at least. And it sounds like you agree with that. Like,
I do.
Yeah. And I think it's special. It's special for what we do and like what we're creating. It's like, generative art is the only like artist that can enable that, right? I think.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot of artists that can do a lot of art forms that can do one of ones, right? There's a lot of art forms that can do small runs of things like that and sell for a lot of money, right? Like that's kind of universal across art forms. But I think generative art, one of the things that we have that's just unique and special is this aspect of that we can have we can make algorithms that make almost unlimited amount of outputs, right? But yeah, so I'm glad that I think it's cool that we're all converging on these ideas, because I think it's a special idea, and like I really would like to see something. I would just like to see products in the world that are like that, because I think everyone would. I think to have your own version of something, right? That's yours, or a site where I can go and I can, I'm going to buy a shirt, but then I can cycle through an algorithm to figure out what print I would like. And then buy that one. I know, okay, I'm going to get that. Like just like we were doing with your project just now, we were generating new outputs. This would be cool. So I think it's something that I hope, I think people, hopefully it becomes a reality.
I agree.
But anyways, so I think, let's talk about your future. Like, what do you think? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to take your art, from here?
From here?
I know you're talking about the prints. You obviously answered that question a little bit before, we just had that discussion. But is there anything else that you would kind of like to see, that you're really interested in beyond like this physical aspect of it?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm feeling kind of at that point where I've done 3 projects already this year, and I'm about to have a 4th one come out, and maybe I'm just kind of need that pause moment.
Yeah.
And then maybe like at the end of the summer, I'll feel like, oh, okay, I know where we're going next. But right now, for me, I think I'm about to hit summer break.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I do want to play with making projects that somehow like incorporating the generative aspect with what works for the Rizzo, which is when you send a file here, you do it in grayscale. So and you can have different opacities, and as the colors overlap, they make different shades. Like I've been doing these things that I can show you for those that are watching, like all the
great.
different so it picks a different layer, and then it picks a different opacity, and then they kind of merge over each other. And so you can get so many different shades just from 3 colors. So it's really cool. And I want to figure out how to incorporate that into, this is a really simple algorithm. It's just grids, but something more, I don't know, along the lines of what I like to do. So
yeah, no, that's really cool. And I'm sure I'd love to see that up close, because I think that the texture and is probably completely different than an inkjet printer.
Yeah, it really is. This has a fluorescent pink in it. Hopefully you can tell like how bright.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can totally tell.
Yeah, the orange and stuff.
That's something that I really like about plotter artwork and things like this. And that printer is that it really, you can totally tell the difference between inkjet. Like even a really like I have an Epson printer here that's really good, inkjet printer, and I use good paper and stuff, and it's great. But having, I don't know, like, but the plotter definitely does that, where it's just like you can't like, an inkjet can't like make that, right? Like it just can't.
Do you do plotting? I
do some plotting. Yeah, I have a plotter right behind me. Yeah. Yeah. I did shields on plottables, a project that I really liked, which was my kind of first jumping into plotting. But yeah, I've been messing around. I haven't actually showed anybody this, but I was I just was this is my family, a photo. I took a photo of my family here, and I plotted it. I basically like just wrote a like quick algorithm of just kind of throwing lines at the photo, and like where basically there was, I think I did by lightness or yeah, basically where it was like more lightness, like over a threshold, I basically just like threw small lines at it. So and then made basically a SVG from it.
Looks really cool.
So
yeah,
it's just like a quick thing I just did, but I thought it was like cool. Like I've been messing more and more with like kind of like what I did with my brother with Marfa Mill somewhere and things like that. I really have been interested in the intersection between photography and generative art and how those two things can play together. So that's what I've been exploring a lot. So that was what I did with the plotter, which I think is cool, just to like make a how can you take and make like a vector image from, or a vector representation of something from a photo, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been great to just chat with you and to learn about your art and your career and you. And, it's been great to, be part of this community, Gen Art Club, everything with you. And are you going to be in Marfa this year?
I think so.
Great.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Seems like it's going to be maybe in November this year. So
It's gonna be back to cold,
yeah,
right?
so we got to pack the winter jackets. I remember when we went there, not last year, the year before in November. I live in Massachusetts, and that was the first time I pulled out the winter jacket was in Texas. So
Yeah, I was shocked at how cold it was because I'm just in Arkansas. It is not
Yeah.
nearly cold.
yeah, exactly. It was cold. It was 30 degrees. Yeah, for sure. But thanks so much for joining in and sharing, everything with all the listeners. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you in Marfa.
Definitely. Take care.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.